I'm going to do this in two parts. The first part is going to be a bit about my story. And then the second part is going to be a little bit about connecting what I've learnt with where perhaps some of you are at and sort of going forward, and a whole sort of range of thoughts on those things. But let me start with my story. 20 years ago, well, wasn't that, a long time ago, I was working in a rural clinic in rural South Africa, and actually a rural hospital. And it had been raining for the last 4 or 5 days, and most of the district roads had been washed away. And there were clinics around this hospital, and there was a telephone call from a nurse, and she said, "I've got this woman in labor. She's been in labor for 3 days. This baby is distressed. She's going to die. This baby is going to die. You've got to come quickly." And the bridges had been washed away. So the hospital had a Land Rover, and I climbed in the Land Rover and got to the swollen river, and right up to the gunnels of the Land Rover, crossed it, arrived at the clinic, only to find that there was no power and that this woman needed to be operated on immediately. They had no scalpels, so we got a razor blade, and she used a candle, and I then spent the next half an hour getting this baby out and saving her and the baby. Well, that's what I thought when I started reading this book, age 13. So this was my projection of my future, was the swollen river, the doctor coming to save people. And if you haven't worked out, that was a fictitious story, inspired at age 13 by a young boy who started to think about his future and who loved story. And the Jungle Doctor, inspired me to think about a career in medicine. The only problem was the career counselors said, if you do medicine, it's the last thing you should do. You should do anything else but not medicine. And I used to faint at the sight of blood. I did actually collapse when I delivered my first baby. And my colleague was there to catch it. And, you know, I had a strong desire to make a real difference, to save the world, to just make the big change. But I was also an acne-ridden teenager with sort of girlfriend issues. So I think this was probably a stronger driver for my career choice than the saving the world. But all these things came together, a bit of narrative, trying to get the girl and save the world. So after a fairly traumatic medical school experience, I managed to start doing medicine. This was taken on the Somali border, and I spent 5 or 6 years working in clinical medicine in rural hospitals and then in townships in South Africa. And to be quite honest, it was pretty awful. And I had the first of those, which was, I think any good social entrepreneur needs to have a midlife crisis in your early 20s. So if you haven't had a midlife crisis yet, then you're not a social entrepreneur in the making. So sorry for you. But the seeing of 100 people a day in a, almost unfortunately like a vet, and then sending them straight back into the context that had created the problem in the first place, just really got me to think, what is this all about? And sometimes crisis is the mother of invention, because it forced me to start thinking, as Pamela was saying, around how is it that we reach people? How do we take, doctors aren't great communicators, so how do we get across these health issues in a way that will resonate with people? And naturally, media. A director in Hollywood said to me, he said, America is today what Hollywood portrayed it to be 20 years ago. So does media create norms, or does it follow norms? It creates norms. And so my idea was to, a lot of people watching television, radio, was to, instead of doing the nurse speaks at 2 p.m, is to say, well, what is popular? And it just so happens that the thing that is most popular is also the most powerful, which is story. That's why when I told you my story, some of you were listening. If I started to give you facts and figures, you'd probably stop listening. But if I tell you story, I resonate. We are hot-wired for story. Our brains are designed in such a way that the way we have learnt about life and about what is normal through generations is through story. And it's not an accident that prime time on television is story. It's drama. It's narrative. It's soap. It's whatever. And the ability of story to actually create social norms is huge. You know, what we wear, what we eat, our sexual mores, etc., are largely as what we see normal. So the idea was to create and this was perhaps the innovation, was not to just create a TV drama, but to create a platform that would deal with multiple issues over time, a popular narrative platform in which we could actually integrate many other issues. And so that was the birth of Skoll City. And right from the beginning, it was a TV drama. It's still, after 18 years, one of the 3 most watched programs in Southern Africa. It was radio drama in 9 languages. And then supplementary print. So it was multimedia coming from different angles. It evolved into dealing with policy, so supplemented these sort of things with policy work, advocacy, and so on. And then, do you recognize him? I made him especially large, just in case you didn't recognize him. But key to my approach was what I've called the Shrek approach, which is, if you think about it, Disney or whoever it is who creates Shrek, DreamWorks or whatever, when they create Shrek, their biggest cash driver is not Shrek. It is the merchandising that goes after Shrek. I mean, Lucas made his fortune by taking the merchandising of Star Wars. He said, don't pay me for Star Wars. In fact, he didn't get a cent for Star Wars, but I want the rights to all the merchandising. And that's what he's got into perpetuity, and that's why he's a wealthy man. So what it is, it's the purpose of taking the popularity of story and then leveraging it into a whole range of other environments. So that was the Shrek approach, and it meant everything. The brand Skoll City is as popular as Coca-Cola, or as known in South Africa, and it created all these things, lots of publications, lots of languages across lots of countries. It even created, we had the children's equivalent, Soul Buddies, and life began to imitate art. Kids said, we want to be buddies, and now it's the biggest social club in the country. There are 7,000 clubs and 180,000 kids who meet weekly, and they're inspired by Soul Buddies, the stories that are told on television. And it's gone into other countries. It's a sort of franchise model. And yes, there is a lot of evidence to show that it's had impact. One of the things is that it's been responsible for averting 500,000 HIV infections over a period of time. And I won't go into how we know that, but we do, I think. And then we have things like this, which is a series that dealt with violence against women. We brought in a thing that was around pot banging, which to break up domestic violence, you bang pots. This was from South America. We put it into Skoll City. And 6 months later, this was an article in one of the magazines, one of the newspapers. So this had not been seen in the country before, and yet we now had communities adopting this behavior of breaking up domestic violence with pots. And the other thing is there are 10 communities called Skoll City, and so on and so on. And I also learned another thing. Do you know what this is? You're all bright people. I mean, in fact, I've been a bit overawed by the brightness, but tell me what this is. What are these guys doing?
Protecting themselves from bushfires?
Excellent, but no. Okay. Washing the roof? Excellent, but no. Okay. Sorry? Pumping up water? No. They're actually creating rain on a TV set. Okay. Okay. So anyway, I was ready for the next midlife crisis. And as I say, I'm a serial entrepreneur and a serial midlife crisis person. And my next midlife crisis was saying, you know, reality is that we're dealing with these big issues, but in effect, there are things that underpin these issues that cut across humanity, which is if you have a healthy set of human relationships, a lot of the big social issues are driven by social relationships that are broken apart. And basically, the glue that sticks together social relationships is what we call values. I respect you, I have integrity, I will have compassion, and so on and so on. And so, you know, Ever the Idealist believed that if we put these issues of values into narratives, we could use them again using the Shrek effect into a whole range of things. And that was the beginning of Heartlines about 10 years ago. So I left Soul City, still continues today, been there 17 years, and I was able to move on to Heartlines. And basically, it's promoting lived values for social and economic development using, and this time it's not just TV drama, it's film. And so we created 9 films, we're into our 10th now. And the first intervention was around just taking really, and this is the key, was narratives that would connect with people's life experience. So it's fiction, everything we do is fiction, but it connects deeply because of our research process with people's life experience. And again, it has the Shrek effect, written media, inter-community, promoting dialogue, using narrative to actually get people to talk about things. And you got it? Next midlife crisis. This, by the way, is the last one for now, so there's probably another one coming, but was with all of this work with communication and media is a bit like coming to an inspirational talk, is that you get this, I'm going to change, boy oh boy, you know, that's fantastic, or New Year's resolutions. And unless there's some sort of supportive environment to actually pick up on those things, that moment of desire of change, that hotline, that whatever, is that a lot of what we do actually is less powerful than it could be. And so I've been battling with this thing about how do we actually do a few things. Take that moment of aha and immediately to connect it to things people can do differently, etc. Number one problem. Second thing I was battling with was the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of amazing people doing the most extraordinary things across the world. And yet there is no good way of finding out where they are and what they're doing, number one. They can't find each other even in the same city often, especially in developing countries. And the people like us here, if we wanted to contribute, whether it was time, money, goods, or services, you know, how do we find these people? Where are they? And so this led me to basically our current era and digital communication. And there are now more cell phones in Africa than there are in America. There are more cell phones in South Africa than there are people. So there are 54 million people in South Africa, and there are about 60 million cell phones. So essentially, the power of digital media for social change, and we know about Arab Spring and all of these things, but its potential, instead of being one to many, but to be one to one. So that led to, and this concept of we could create a social network which would connect people to each other and to causes. And that was the next folly, which has been by far the hardest, which is to set up this platform called For Good. And basically what it does is, based on your location and your interest, it connects causes and their needs and what they are doing to people's profiles. So it connects people based on profile and so basically we call it the good comes to you. You decide what it is that you are interested in, and then you can look when a need comes your way, you can contribute. But the other side is like an eBay, which is an offer, which is, I'm a doctor, I'm willing to give 5 hours of my time once a month to a children's cause within 10 k's of where I live. I put that as an offer, and like eBay, people bid, and causes bid for that offer. And then tied up with it is rewards. So we've got commercial partners. The more you do on For Good, the more you give, more you get for yourself, and the more you get to give away. So we've got a low-cost airline, we've got a supermarket chain, we've got IT people, and this concept of give-get, I get to a certain level, I get it, and give away. But there's been a crucial difference here. I've, up to now, been completely not-for-profit, and raising money sucks. It's awful. I'm like a hustler. So basically, this is a for-profit. And the model here is that corporates increasingly are wanting to engage in communities in which they serve. And they have volunteer programs, etc. They don't have the resources to look after them. So what we do is we integrate For Good into their intranet. We're able to tag their employees. We're able to because of the points thing, we're able to sort of tell them what they're doing, where they are. They can create inter-company challenges, inter-unit challenges, and so on. And the other part of it is being the back end of third-party initiatives. So we are the engine behind other initiatives that are similar. So Vodafone is about to launch something in South Africa called Change the World. It's for good, and so on and so on. So that's what the last 20 years has felt like. It's felt like this huge wave. You get to the top, often at the top, you're surfing down it, and you don't know when the hell that thing's going to hit you on the head. Because it just feels like, it doesn't matter how long you've done this for, you still, every day feels like you've never done it before. So I'm just waiting for that bloody great wave to hit me on the head. But in the meantime, I'm sort of surfing down the edge. So in the last part of this, I just want to share with you a little bit about what I've learned. And most of what I've learned has been from making mistakes and so on. And I'm dividing them up into two things. Basically, what I feel is necessary in your inward journey. And the second part is, and that is about you. It's about the individual. It's about how you see the world. And the second is about the outward journey, is how you interact with others. And this essentially, there are a few points under both of those. So the first one is that clarity of vision comes from looking before you leap. And I have made the mistake, particularly with this digital platform, of having this wonderful idea, and I'm only telling you a small piece of it, but it was huge. And I thought, I've done this all before. I know media. If I only just get the right people and put it into place. Let me tell you, I think digital guys and used car salesmen are right up there together. So, sorry for that, if any of you are sort of IT professionals. But I just didn't do my homework and spent 3 years and a lot of money and almost slit my wrists. So clarity of vision is really important by actually understanding the environment, doing the research, taking your idea and really doing due diligence. As my father used to say, time spent in reconnaissance is seldom wasted. But then ultimately, you also got to be brave. And to be honest, a lot of you are in your sort of 20s, early 30s. This is the time. You've got to make the leap. You've got to be brave. And, as much as you do the reconnaissance, you also got to get out there and do that. Because there will never be a better time in your life to take risk than now. It just gets harder. Believe me, it gets harder. And then the elephant principle, I call it, which is essentially you've got to develop a really thick skin. You've got to actually inure yourself to rejection, being told that you're crazy, that this is never going to work, and you've got to persevere. I mean, it's like the elephant. I mean, how many of you have been in the African bush? A few. I mean, elephants, they don't turn corners. They just go, and it's you who have to get out of the way. So you've got to be like an elephant. You've got to be single-minded and just keep on going and have quite a thick skin in the process. And then the other thing is you don't let the world trample the idealism out of you. I was told when I was a medical student, you'll get over this. and I'm sure, and I'm making a plea to you, please don't get over this. Don't get over this. It is what makes it all worthwhile. But it's bloody difficult, but it's hell of a rewarding. So don't get over it. And I'm so glad that at this conference there has been one person who just has embraced this completely. So he's my man. He's going to be good. And then we all hear this, be the change you want to see. Go out there, change the world. And we all start off wanting to change the world, and that's good, and that's what we must do. But we must also, and I'm beginning to get to the point in my life where I'm comfortable with this, is that I may not see the change I want to see. And that's okay, because, we live in an instant society, and we want things to be in sort of 2-year plans, 5 years, what's your outcome, what's your reward, 10-year goals, etc., etc. I'm okay with the fact that, in fact, I may never see the real impact of what I do. And I think that we all need to sort of get to the point where it actually is okay not to see the change you want to see, but still go and make that difference. And then adapt or die, because as much as you may have a crystal clear vision and you may want to get out there and do your thing and be like the elephant, is that I was so much like the elephant, and I was so persevering with this digital thing, that I had voices surrounding me telling me, you're trying to do too much, crystallize your vision. I said, forget it. It is easier to change yourself to your environment than it is to change your environment to yourself. So essentially, just say that again, it's easier to change your ideas to match your environment than it is to change the environment to match what you're trying to do. So it's about adapting and understanding. And then know what you don't know. And a lot of what I've done over time is to actually understand that I don't know a hell of a lot about a lot of things. I don't know how to make films. I don't know how to script write. I don't know any of that stuff. But I do know great people who do know those skills. So you surround yourself with people who actually know more than you about things that you want to do. And then just the final 3 points about looking outwards. And those points are this, that basically none of this stuff is possible without people. You know, the right people, it's about finding people who share your passion. I said it in an earlier session, but basically give me somebody with a passion and the desire rather than the skills. Skills we can teach. Passion and desire and focus and just attitude. You can't teach attitude. And you surround yourself by people who've got the attitude right, and you will succeed. People with the right skills, yeah, but attitude is everything. And then partnerships with others. You can't maybe read that, but it says you can put square pegs into round holes, just have to make sure that the hole is big enough, which is not true. That is not true. I have found, to my detriment, I have spent a lot of time putting people who I work with who don't have the right attitude, etc., and trying to get them into the right job, and it's cost me dearly. So it's easier to divorce quickly than it is to keep on going for the long term. Then lead from behind is essentially, I've been able to leave Soul City and move on because I spent a lot of time being back, mainly because I'm lazy, so it was really easy for me to let other people do the work and stuff. But ultimately, if you empower other people, then you have a sustainable intervention. If you right out front, when you go, it's history. So leading from behind, encouraging, motivating, vision casting, supporting, etc., is actually the key. We've got lots of great ideas out there. People are the key to taking your great ideas and translating them into reality. And then my final one is basically just the ethics and values of actually running any form of business, which is do as you would be done by. It sounds so trite, and yet it sums it all up, is that, doing the right thing is never wrong. And I have learned that so many times of having to make hard decisions which were the right decisions, but appeared completely wrong in the world's eyes. So doing the right thing, treating others as you would like them to treat you, being ethical in all you do, you've got to start at home. If you don't do stuff in your own life, then, hey, don't bother with the rest. And with that, I thank you very much, and I hope the beer is warm, which it usually is in England. So there you go.